don't get the random bits of flock numbers and everything appearing for recording.
Yeah. Right. There we go.
Okay. Everyone hear me? Am I all right to go, Laura?
Yep, I reckon go for it. We've got quite a lot of people.
Okay, cool. Let me share my screen. Push it into. Okay, so I can't see anyone, so shout at me if anything crops up or anything like that. Thank you for joining us today. Firstly, I'm John. I'll introduce myself shortly. And yeah, feeding willow to lambs network, working title. Hopefully we'll get to sort all sorts of things out today. Hopefully a session where we can chat through a few things, sort of figure out the direction of where we want it to go and what's most useful for members and or future members, etc. So without first of all, I've got to introduce this, and we'll touch on this later, but this is a photo taken from so the College of Agriculture, Food and Rural Enterprise, so CAFRA, Greenmount campus in Northern Ireland, actually, and this is a willow. This is some inspiration me and Ben took from this willow was planted by I think a year before, so the winter previous to this. So it'd been in the ground maybe 14-16 months, and you can see the growth there. It was planted at sort of 8-foot stake, and you can see the amazing vegetative growth within such a short period of time. So we'll talk more about that in a minute, but I just needed to highlight that because I don't do it later. Okay, so if I can make this work. So just the idea of the session. Introduce firstly a few introductions. So the Trees on Farm team here at the Soil Association, which I'm part of, the sort of broader group of agroforestry networks that we're running, and then sort of run through where we are with the idea of this network. Hopefully you'll be able you'll figure out that lots of it's up in the air, and we want feedback, and we want to hear what everyone has to say about it, so we can sort of mold this network into something that's really useful for everyone. And then briefly, I'm going to run through a farm case study. So Eastbrook Farm, a few of you will have attended potentially the agroforestry show that was hosted at Eastbrook last week. As part of that, we've done a demonstration looking at willow specifically, amongst all sorts of other willow plantings that have happened there as well. So I'm going to run through that maybe for 10 minutes or so, with the idea that in future, hopefully, this farmer case study will be someone within the network presenting what they've done, or things like that to the group, to the network. So it's a real farmer to farmer knowledge exchange, and lots of questions, and hopefully everyone learning all sorts of things. And then lastly, hopefully I'll leave loads of time. We can have I'm not sure how we're going to do this, and it might be that we send around a very simple questionnaire afterwards, but I'd like to try and encourage sort of discussion within the network of a few, and I've got a few pointers. So name of the network is a good one, but also any feedback and things like that. But we'll have a go. If there are too many people, then maybe we can capture it on a questionnaire that we can distribute later, but we'll see. Okay, so briefly, so I'm part of the Trees on Farm team, and we work for the Soil Association charity, and we're based in the sort of wider the wider team is called the Farming and Land Use team, and so we advise farmers, obviously Trees on Farm team, very much focused on trees, and I think used to be called agroforestry, covering a little bit of confusion on that, but covering everything. So woodland, productive forestry, all the way through to single park trees, parkland trees, hedgerows, all sorts of things like that. So any element of the trees, we're trying to cover it. So we offer advice to farmers about how to sort of successfully integrate trees into farm businesses. So we're very much focused on getting trees on farms or bringing trees into management on farms, but for the benefit of farm businesses, not for no other reason. And then also a sort of shameless plug. I sat in a meeting about it this morning. We offer future farm resilient support for those in England. So that's a scheme funded by DEFRA, and I'm very much able to answer tree and agroforestry queries through that as well. So if anyone's interested, then please contact me. Okay. So worth saying, I started in January, and the agroforestry networks sort of seeded me a long time before. They've perhaps been running for three or 4 years now, and to date everything has been geographically focused. So with the idea of creating a sort of local-ish network of farmers that are interested in incorporating trees within their farm management plans and things like that. And yeah, very much locally. So there's farm walks and there's meetings and things like that. It all started as part of a EU-funded project called Fabulous Farmers, and the sort of wider goals of Fabulous Farmers was to look at increasing agroecological practices on farms. Obviously, agroforestry being one of those. So that's now coming to an end, I think end of September, but for our reasons it's coming to an end, and we've managed to find funding for a few of these networks and a few that we're still potentially looking for funding for as well. So these agroforestry networks are in sort of differing states, it's worth saying. Yeah, and then I guess geographically you consider Wiltshire versus Cumbria and North Yorkshire. The topics are very different. So geographically it allows us to focus in on what's important potentially with farmers in specific areas and things. But obviously with this new network, we're not focused geographically. We're spread everywhere, and so it's a bit of a trial from that element. We'll have to see how we get on. Worth saying that, again, it sounds like a shameless plug, but worth saying that they're free to join as many as you want. If you're an upland farmer in Wales or something and think you might be able to learn from farmers in Cumbria and North Yorkshire, then encourage you to reach out and join different networks as well. So send me an email. See my email's there at the bottom, and I can sort of add you to the list. To date and through the Fabulous Farmers, it was set up as a quarterly newsletter that was sent out to people, to farmers, and then maybe a sort of two farm walks a year, trying to get people together looking at farms that have implemented agroforestry. Yeah, so that's how it's been done. Okay, so we've all been pretty busy with the agroforestry show, and if you haven't heard of it, sort of where have you been? But we'll excuse you all. And so I've quickly considered this week, actually. So it's definitely work in progress, and as I said before, if we can get your feedback, farmers growers feedback on this, how this network might really support you, that would be great, and that's sort of my aim for today. These are sort of I scratched my head and this is what I came up with. So a quarterly recorded webinar session, and I've just come up with some ideas here. Definitely by no means the sort of, you know, the agreed the agreed program, but and then an agenda, a sort of sample agenda for that webinar. So for each webinar, we'll have a brief technical session, maybe 15-20 minutes, looking at the elements, so planting and maintenance of willow systems, or designing browsable willow systems, and then really keen to try and get a farmer to, you know, to stand up and talk about what they've done, and then maybe if we can find other researchers, or obviously this is linked to the Innovative Farmers research group, we can have a quick roundup on any research that's been done on willow in agroforestry as well. We'll have to just see, you know, availability of research and researchers and things like that for each session potentially, but then and then have a open floor session where people can bring along pictures and you know, ideas of what they've done and different challenges and how they've overcome it as well. So hopefully a session where people can speak and listen and things like that as well. And we're a little bit sort of, we've not quite figured out exactly how it all works in terms of recording it, but the idea behind recording it is, if you can't make the webinar, then no worries, it gets distributed to the network mailing list, and then everyone can catch up on it, yeah, hopefully feel up to date as well. There's a question around whether the open floor session is recorded or not, and these are all things that we can hear back from people later. So that's the idea. Yeah. So, and then I was just scratching my head of what we're missing. Oh, actually, let me go back. I'm ignoring my notes. Yeah,
Sorry.
go on.
John, just to come in, because I know we're chatting this, we're also thinking of having in-betweenies, you know, have the quarterlies, and in between have little slightly informal discussions, just a bit of a chat, weren't we? We're just thinking of that in between. So yeah, which isn't necessarily there, and we'll take some of the chat and also potentially identify people who have got something interesting to bring forward as the farmer presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Nigel. As I said, I should have followed my notes because I've written this down here. So other ideas, it would be great to do something on social media, whether that's a Twitter or Facebook group, or maybe a hashtag or something. I'm definitely no expert on social media, so any ideas or help would be great there. And then yeah, potentially additional open sessions in between the quarterly for network members to meet really informally, discuss things themselves, you know, ask questions and potentially get to know other people's farms and what's happening, etc. So yeah, thanks for the reminder. So then these are a few things that I'd like help with. Network name. So other webinar topics, good. How should we approach social media and things like that? And we can come back to this in the discussion at the end. And I guess just something to consider now over the next 10 minutes or so as I talk about Eastbrook. So any immediate questions regarding the network or this that anyone has? I'm struggling to see. No, I'll take silence as good. Sorry, I've now. No, bear with me. I've just lost my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, right. Everything okay? Everyone can still see everything. I'm just going to run on to Eastbrook, which is predominantly a dairy farm. So I've sort of got half of the equation here, and I have to admit, with it's severely lacking sheep for this network specifically, but I wanted to sort of talk about the process of establishing willow amongst loads of other different tree species as well, but what they've found and another example of what we're trying now. So Eastbrook Farm, it's to read the slides, but Wiltshire Oxford border, about 6 miles east of Swindon. Sorry if people were at the agroforestry show last weekend. This might be not very useful, but it's farmed by Helen Browning, who's the chief exec of the Soil Association as well, and Ben Raskin, who is a member of the Trees on Farm team, also helps with the agroforestry. So they've been planting trees for about 8 years, and it's sort of centered around 200 acres at the bottom of the farm that is owned. The rest of the farm is leased from the Church of England. So as I said, two dairy herds, and the lower farm here is mainly used for browsing young stock, so dairy stock. It's a fair way away from the dairy, so sort of bringing cows in and out is difficult. So it tends to be sort of left alone young stock or bulls and things like that as well. So, and looking at the picture, you've got all sorts of different agroforestry systems in place here. So I don't know, can you see my pointer?
Yes, John.
Great. So here you've got a sort of quite experimental fruit forest. So all sorts of things from almonds, walnuts, apricots, apples, pears planted here. You've got a living barn, or what will be a living barn, planted here in the centre of the farm. Pear alley trees, so alley trees planted with peri pears, also willow and sort of cropping nurse trees in between as well. And then we've got various woodlands and things like that. But this field here, which is called Lanes, was one big field. It's now been subdivided into 3 with new hedges, sort of edible hedges as well, and then specifically focusing on this area here, which is a sort of graze, a browsing block that was put in 2000. So this is what we're going to focus on. This predominantly was initially in 2000 was willow, poplar, and also mulberry. There was a lot of interest in terms of what that could do from for a nutritional perspective. So lots of willow went in. It wasn't. Let me click the next slide. So it was put in 2000, as I said. Sorry, 2020. Getting confused. 2020, and it didn't establish very well. You can see from the picture it's quite weedy. It's not actually, you probably can't see it, but there are young willow and poplar shoots now, and this season it's actually grown quite well. I think when I first saw it back in January, I sort of thought, are there any trees in there at all? It wasn't as easy as I guess some people think willow and poplar are often to establish. So the major issues was deer pressure. The young shoots weren't getting away. It was being nibbled, and it was sort of being kept at browsing height by predominantly deer. The cows did get in, I think, on 2 occasions, which sort of obliterated some of the plants, and that was quite difficult. So then the latest idea, and it was sort of with the idea that the show is coming as well, and it would be a really good platform to talk to people about how another idea of establishing willow on farms, and actually referring back to the very first slide, the picture of the really impressive willow growth from Northern Ireland. That was sort of the inspiration behind this. So we sourced willow stakes from ancient pollards. So if I just go back, you can sort of see from my this line here is a brook line, and there are really old white willow pollards in there. So sort of talking 8 foot, breast height diameter at breast height trees that have been repollarded maybe sort of 3 or 4 years ago. So it involved scrambling up one of these low ones and basically sawing 10 poles out of the regrowth from these pollards, and they were probably about 12 foot in length, these poles, with the idea that probably naively we'd be able to knock them down 4 foot into the ground. We basically used a metal bar to make as deep a hole as we could, and then we used the sledgehammer and hammered the poles in as deeply as we could. Probably not 4 foot, maybe more like 2. A few things, obviously, I guess, making it clear it was to be able to talk about it on the various farm walks that we held at the show, as well as something we wanted to do. The timing probably wasn't perfect. It would potentially be better maybe in a month or two's time. The leaves will have fallen off the willow, and also the ground would be a little bit wetter, which potentially might help establishment, but we'll just have to see. Some things we plan to do is we're going to put tall tree guards around a couple to see whether there's any risk of deer nibbling willow bark, maybe when it establishes. And we'll see for that, but then just monitor and see how it works. Obviously, compared to the original browse block, we've now got you can't really tell from this picture, but that post is sort of at least 6 foot out of the ground, so it's at a height that makes it potentially out of reach of cattle, which I'm talking about here. I know it's a sheep theme, but and then also we need to figure out how best to harvest it, chop it, drop it, that sort of thing, how that might work in time, but we can worry about that if and when they establish. I think that's everything. Before I sort of open it up to questions, so Ben here, this is actually the Wiltshire meeting, the Wiltshire Agroforestry Network. So we did a farm walk back in February, potentially. You can't really see, but the willow tree on the left, so sort of the left side of the man with the bobble hat, they're all wearing bobble hats, but the leftmost person was planted at the same time as the tree in the sort of center of the picture, and the difference being that the one on the left received about 3 foot of mulch, of wood chip mulch, by accident, with the idea that it would be spread on other trees, and people just didn't get around to it. And it doesn't really do it justice, but it's quite considerable. So I guess a message that they've learned at Eastbrook is very much consider mulching. Potentially sheep's wool might be more readily available to most of you, potentially, but wood chip, if not, fantastic properties. Especially willow, very easy to wood chip. You don't need to worry necessarily about keeping it away from the bark of the willow, and also it'll keep the moisture in, which I think is sort of most of the challenge with establishing willow. And then why did I no? Yeah, so this is just another angle of the browse block, and you can see there's lots of sort of perennial weeds in there at the moment, but and these stems. So does anyone have any questions about Eastbrook specifically and what we've tried to do?
I'll just jump in on a couple of comments there. I did go down early last year, look at the browse block with the potential of bringing some sheep onto the farm, have a demo unit, but there just wasn't enough browse there. So it's interesting to see those large stakes going in since, which hopefully should establish a little bit more. Those pollarded trees down the hedgerow were great. That we could have potentially done some cut and drop. That was a masses of good vigorous willow regrowth, and that is always a potential way of looking to get the establishment within this. Some of the questions coming in chat about how much salicylic acid and what the different varieties have got in them are still little bits to be sort of determined. There's some literature out there, but it's not actually that well established at which varieties and what causes your salicylic acid and cobalts to be different. So it's something within this work, and another big application we're doing somewhere else is to looking at some different more commercial willow varieties in terms of their composition. Also on the willow block, you're talking about mulberry. Mulberry's quite often included because it's considered to be a high protein leaf, so it's 15 to 30% protein, whereas the other species you're mentioning will be about 10-12% crude protein. So that's why you'll be having mulberry in a forage block, to give you that high value protein leaf.
Brilliant. I guess open it up to everyone else. Any questions? Or I can see I've looked at the chat now, and Ben's here, who was behind a lot of it at Eastbrook. So any questions I find challenging, I can direct to him now. So that's reassuring.
John, there's quite a lot of questions about the benefits of planting small or planting big, and it'd be interesting to hear other people's views on that. I mean, as a general rule, I like establishing small trees. I think they do better. But in this instance, as you said in the introduction, we had big challenges with predators. Didn't particularly want to use sort of big guards everywhere. So that was why we're potentially looking at these bigger ones. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they develop. The ones we saw in Ireland seem to establish very quickly and very vigorously. So that's sort of what inspired us. But
they had worth saying they had their own issues. So it wasn't just willow that was planted in this strip that they planted in Northern Ireland. They had other trees as well, and quite often the issue was that the sheep would push the young trees over. So if it wasn't properly staked, the sheep would sort of stretch up to nibble. So their idea is go 6 to 8 foot up and a very sturdy stake, and you're not going to have that issue. So if there's no other questions about Eastbrook, obviously we're happy to answer anything within the discussion section, but we can move on to the discussion section. So if I don't know whether Nigel, do you think we want to keep this up, or
no? I think
people
much. I've commented, there's a couple of comments in chat about dropping the presentation, so because then we can see each other, because we've got the cameras on discussion. It's nice to see faces sometimes, and we'll have that discussion. So there was certainly, and we sort of moved into an area of discussion really, which was establishing willow. If we've got willow, how do we use it? If we haven't got willow, how do we establish it? And we've come in here, so it is a big valid question, and what people have done with how big a whip have they put in? Have they done large bits? Are they looking to sort of pollard and things? So that's the bit that the interesting thing to me is what people have got, how they're planning to use it, and then there's some real sort of everybody's tried a little bit, so let's learn from each other. That's the idea of the discussion, is we all get bits from each other.
you're still sharing, John. I don't know if you've
sorry,
or at least there's sharing at my end still. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, sorry everyone. But
we planted 100 just in a strip to see whether they would grow, and they actually did. So what we've done this year is we've cut the middle row down right at the base, and literally just thrown the tree in with the sheep. And so they're eating what they want, and then when they finish, we take it out. We've just been using the whips, but I'm wondering now if it's worth using the stem.
So about to say, yeah, you've always got the option potentially of taking that out, let them nip the leaf off, and then the what's left on the whip, whether that will grow. How big were the whips that you went? You said you did the rows, so yeah, the big question, we were talking size. Were these sort of 12-inch whips, or were you on what sort of size whips were you putting in?
Were they not? We planted them 9 inches. Yeah, so what were they, 9? I think we bought 90 centimeters, and I think we planted them about 30. So there was 60 still sticking up, and they came up fairly quickly. We're down near Land's End. It's fairly evil down here, with wind, which strips the leaves, and they won't grow that tall. They're up to about, what do you think we are now, 6 foot? 7,
10, 11 feet tall.
Oh, we went to about 10 or 11 now, but yeah, that's what we've cut down. It's just the mid, because we planted them in rows of 3. We've cut the middle. We cut in the middle row out, totally right down to the ground to see what happened. Because we've also been experimenting with our sheep. We've got we had quite a lot of worm burden last year, like most people. And yeah, we were worming, but now we've split them. We've got 2 different types of sheep, but they all more or less have the same problem with worms. So we fed one lot on willow, and they have been worm free, and the other ones, bless them, we didn't give them any willow. And they were not worm free, so now they're on willow.
Always interesting to get that sort of comparison of things on the farm. So have those that middle row, have they started to come out, because you've basically coppiced them, you've cut them down to a coppice level? So have they started to regrow coppice like?
No, not yet, because we only just started doing it. So
okay, so we're hoping for then those to bush out, get a bit thicker on those, and then is the plan then to take another row each year, or move on to the other rows?
Well, no, we have was it about 1,000 meters? Yeah. We have 1,000 meters of hedging to plant. We've got no hedging. We haven't got any hedging at all.
Yeah, so you always move that to hedging. That's good.
Yes, we're going to put it in for hedging, because then they can help themselves.
Yeah,
because we're looking at alder as well, but they don't seem to like the alder so much.
No, alder doesn't tend to be very palatable for sheep. When we did the initial tree work, good nutritional qualities, but alder is notoriously poor palatability. So great when you look at it in isolation for a fodder tree, but they don't like eating it. So how about say, should we drop on? I think Paul's next in line on the hands by the looks of it.
Okay, yeah, I'm Paul. I'm based down in Shropshire. I mean, I've been growing willow primarily originally for goats, but now for the sheep. And I put in a couple of 100 willow stakes, well, probably about this long. But I mean, one of the queries that I've got is the types of willow, and I put in, apologize for my pronunciation, Viminalius, I think, which was one of them, which is the long-leafed willow, but also one called Salix myabina. And my goats and sheep really dislike the myabina. I think it's too bitter. So, I think it's the variety of willow seems to be important for the fodder. But then again, we're also looking obviously at the nutrient content and antithelmic properties. But also when you chop it, originally I was leaving mine, I put mine in and I didn't chop for about 3 years. Then I chopped every other year, and now I'm chopping for forage, which I will do this afternoon, once a year on just the new green. So I'd be interested to see what other people are cutting.
You're talking of chopping for forage. Is that for leaf, or are you taking stem material in that as well?
I'll take a 10-foot stem. So the new growth this year.
Okay, yeah, because you're diluting a lot of the good stuff by taking you'll have some woody heartwood in there, which in terms of the cobalt is diluting that. You're diluting out a lot of the cobalt there. I think it's one of the the regular discussions I get into that people think you're feeding all of it, where it isn't necessary. You don't necessarily need to feed all of it. It's feeding the better bits sometimes. The leaf has the energy, has the protein. All the rest of that doesn't. So you're just diluting it. So it depends on what you're feeding it to, but you're taking a better quality feed and potentially making it worse there. There could be a case. So it may be that one of the things, if we go mechanical, we have to try and get the separation. But if we're actually on grazing, the sheep themselves will separate it, hopefully, and just take the leaf and hopefully leave the bark. So that's on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. If I put the 10-foot rods down for the sheep, they will eat the leaves. But also, if I leave them in there for 2 or 3 days, they'll strip all the bark as well. So I presume that they're interested in the bark. But that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in discussions.
It's one of the things, actually, is one of the motivations on why they bark. So they go for the leaf first. Do they then bark because there isn't the leaf available? Is it a general hunger thing? Is it the bark thing? Are the things in the bark that are useful to them? The bark certainly does have the tannins in. When I've done some composition work, the bark is lower in cobalt than the leaf, but the bark is actually higher in zinc than the leaf. So so there are some different composition things looking from bark to. Admittedly, that was a couple branches at a couple different times a year of one tree, and I was having a chat with Lindsay at the Lindsay Wistance at the agroforestry event, and was saying that the composition going in and out of the bark is likely to change as you go through the year. So it's building up our knowledge of all these things, but and our thoughts on how to best utilize them as well. So about to say, should we jump to, I think Deborah's next on the list.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you fine.
This is Colin and Deborah. We've got a small holding in the southern uplands of Scotland. We're at about 750 feet. We planted tons and tons of willow over the years, mainly along farm tracks and our perimeters, so areas that the sheep and the goats don't get into, and we cut it for firewood for ourselves, but also we cut down tree hay for the goats and the sheep. I'm interested in both Janet and Paul's similar issues. We've used the willow tree hay for worm management as well, successfully, and we use a lot of Viminalis, but we've also got lots of other different willow species. We mainly grow them from sort of 10-inch stakes. We've not tried the kind of big stakes. I suppose I'm interested, or we're both interested, in how we can get to a stage where the sheep and the goats are doing the work for us instead of us cutting all the tree hay, hanging it up. I mean, it's great actually for during the winter. It's an extra thing. But how can we? What would be the? I put a comment earlier in the chat about the design element is really interesting to me, because the goats for sure don't know about the sheep, but the goats for sure would bark everything. And actually we have native breeds. We've got Soe and Casamol Moritz. So my suspicion is that they would very, very quickly bark any saplings that were there.
Yeah, it might be that you're there because if you're, the stage your willow's getting to at the side is at the stage where it's moderate mature trees and you're into a sort of pollard and drop. But, you're by, grazing, you're never really going to, the leaf's going to go before the winter. So the only way, the ways to keep it for the winter are we're really into the tree hay. We're looking at some sort of ensiling type situation or some artificial dry, and and even moving down the sort of willow pellet route and things. So that's always ways to actually keep it for the winter is doing that. So it's always an interesting thing if we want to go winter. I must admit, the bit in terms of the cobalt supplementation, we don't tend to be low in cobalt in the winter. So from a cobalt perspective, from the biosupplementation of cobalt perspective, the winter feeding of willow isn't that as rife, but you're still going to have your worm control and your use of the willow leaf as a general nutrient. Of course, will fit with trying to conserve it and use it for winter. So that's there. So Katie, I think's next.
Hi, I'm Katie. I have a show herd of dairy goats up in Aberdeenshire, and I've been feeding willow for quite a lot of years because particularly with the bark, it's really good for getting your butterfats up at shows, because our shows aren't just about conformation. You have to do milk samples and weights, and it all gets tested for butterfats and proteins. What I've been interested in since I attended your webinar before, actually, when you talked about zinc in the bark, one of the things I'm going to try this year, normally I do a bit of bark stripping and feed it to the milkers. I'm going to try it for the males pre-mating, because obviously zinc's quite important for semen quality. So I'm going to try, I've got 2 different fields with different males in. I'm going to try with one lot feeding extra willow to them and see if I get much difference in terms of fertility.
Yeah, so it'd be your fertility, affect your libido as well a little bit as well. Well, not your own libido, but the male goat libido as well. Yeah, you need to remember, get your timing. You need to be quite a few, you're on 6 to 8 weeks semen production, so you need to be in a good sort of 10 weeks before, really. Yeah,
well, we're not going to start mating till end of October, so we've been introducing it over the past kind of month or so. So
okay,
hopefully...
yeah, so the timing's about right then. So yeah, that's good. That's good.
But I'm interested
sorry.
Finding out about tips on how to dry for the winter, because we've tried doing tree hay before with the willow, and we find, because we're so damp here, it just goes a bit mouldy. Really struggle to store it for any length of time. So if we could have a session maybe on how to do stuff like that, that would be really helpful.
So moving and conserving, and how to do that, how to dry, whether we need to do that, and then the problem is then, are we then potentially drying all this, all the twig that we're not really wanting to feed, so we're having to dry that, or are we then chucking a load of leaf in the bottom of the Rayburn or something? So it's which may could be options, and then we got that, but it's getting the right amounts, isn't it? So it's definitely something to consider.
I mean, certainly for the goats, you want them to be eating a certain amount of the twig as well anyway, because you want that roughage in terms of your butterfat production. So it's getting the balance right.
Yes. Yeah, I must admit, Laura's put a note in the chat that certainly most of the people tree hay is just tying it up in the roof of the barn, but you're saying that you're a bit damp for that, it's not drying. So,
it dries initially and then it moulds.
Right, so it's then getting damp in the barn, yes. Okay, should we, for interest of time, move on to Ian?
Okay, thanks. Back in 1980s, I was in Malaysia teaching at the Agriculture University, and next door was at the Research Institute was a site with Leucaena, a tree legume, Leucaena hedgerows, 1 meter wide hedgerow, 3 meter wide grass strip in between. And this was being grazed by local dairy cows, 4 cows to the hectare on a rotational system. I did present this to a meeting of the botanical people of zoology of zoos, and I can send this for circulation to members of the network if you like, and I can send it to Laura as a PowerPoint presentation. I think on a sort of commercial system, we should be looking at a hedgerow system. I was at Shuttleworth 30 years back, and we were using 9-inch pieces of willow, just poked straight in the ground, and that was quite effective in establishing the willow. Lots of things, of course, about establishment, but on a commercial basis, I think possibly if we establish into the hedgerows and then grass down the strips in between, cut for conservation until the hedges are established, then we can trim them back and start introducing the yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, I must admit that's yeah, I'm about to say, and I think there's you know, there's more than one way to strip the willow rather than to skin a cat. I think it's more apt in this thing, but it's yeah, there's ways. You know, clumps have big clumps have advantages. Corner plots have advantages. You know, if you're you take out that awkward corner of the field, so it's working with what we've got. It's working with the situation we've got. I was having a nice chat with somebody, I don't know whether they're in here, was just talking about establishing for grazing, and they're on a 4-day rotational system anyhow, and they're just saying, right, what I'm going to do between all the paddocks, I'm going to plant a strip of willow, and then once that willow's established, you just on your walkthrough, on your change of pasture, you'll have access to willow every 4th day. Just and that can be controlled about how fast you move them between, whether you're opening a gate into the willow and opening a gate straight through and they're straight through, or whether you're opening a gate into the willow, leave them for a couple of hours, open a gate out into the field and chase them out. So that'll be just very interesting on those sort of things, on exactly how we do these things. And that's where there's 30 or 40 different ways in this room of doing things, and we can all get bits from each other. It's really great onto that. So should we go to Patrick? You're muted.
Sorry, Patrick, you're on mute still, so we can't hear you. If you could take yourself off mute.
Hi there. I'm Patrick. I'm based up on Speyside. We're just about to put in some riparian woodland. But on the field side, on one section, we're looking at about 250 meters of willow hedgerow. And my plan is to use a ryelock, a low ryelock fence, about 450 mil, and then above that to have electric fencing tape, which I can then remove in long or short sections, depending on the number of sheep or cattle that we've got in the field at the time. I don't know whether people think that will work or whether it's unworkable or not.
I remember you sent this to me in an email, didn't you, Patrick? I think down.
Yeah.
So I have seen this, and I have sat there thinking, yep, sounds brilliant. Yep, it's going to be there. It's like almost a foot plate they can go over, and then thought, what's stopping them jumping into your fence line and shooting down the entire length? So you're going to need little cross fences in your line, aren't you, to stop that?
Yeah.
Has anyone else tried anything similar to that at all, or be good to hear if anyone else has got experience? You're all on mute, by the way, if anyone is.
So you'll need to unmute yourselves if you want to come in.
Yeah, ours is just fenced off with sheep fencing. And so what we do is when we want them to have it, we poke it through the sheep fencing, and they'll eat that off, and then we pull it back through. Very simple.
Yeah, I'm about saying that will probably work with yours, Patrick, as well. If you've got that, you almost drop the fencing, pull it through, and put the fencing back the other side of it, so it comes through. So you're almost you're almost there. You could probably just have a bar and a loader to pull a whole load over at one stage and mechanically and just sort of pull it through. Use the flexibility of the willow, because we've got quite flexible trees here.
Right. Yeah, that's a possibility. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, so it's almost that like pull it through the top bar and have a removable top bar that you put back in, and you have it either in or out, and then it just comes through to graze, and you take that away and drop it back. It gives some controllability, doesn't it? So it's good thinking. So yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's good. There's been some really good sort of chat around a lot of things around willow and things there. I keep looking at that picture of Emma. It looks like she's wearing a wedding dress because she sat on a seat with a white blanket behind her with a white top on. So
Definitely not a wedding dress.
I was still jealous of your woodland top purple top. It was a better purple than mine.
I'll try and get you one if you want.
There's some really interesting things in the chat about drying the willow, chipping the willow, and adding microorganisms and so on. I don't know if anyone wants to tell us. It'd be quite interesting in the sort of the fermenting that. Hang on a minute, just looking in the chat that Rod was talking about. Do you want to tell us what you've been doing with that, Rod? That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I could do. Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah, yeah. I was just exploring different ways of using it. So I just chipped it up with a chipper and then rammed it really tight into a barrel and just added some microorganisms from Agriton just to see what happened with it. And it fermented really nicely. And the cattle loved eating it.
Okay, the microorganisms, this is like silage additives.
It's that sort of thing. It's just no, it just stops it going mouldy and it keeps it fermenting.
And that was quite palatable, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, the cattle loved it.
And did they eat the whole chip, or were they picking the leafy material out?
The whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like oh, Ian's come back.
Yes, I've just recently been thinking whether we might look at weeping willow, which could allow the actual stem portion to be kept away from animals and allow access to the weeping bit, which would also possibly have a higher digestibility than standard willow. Weeping willow is used in Lesotho, growing along the streams, and then it is cut and fed to animals.
Yeah, I must admit, I've not. Yeah, we've looked at lots of different willows, including the ones that do weep down. Yeah, I don't know exact different varieties. In terms of cobalt, we've not found a willow that isn't higher in cobalt, and it does have that advantage of coming down. And you know, it can be stripped quite well. It tends to be quite small leaf, doesn't it? The weeping varieties, but yeah, it's still got the potential to work. But it's building this information bank on what's working with the animals. Are they consuming it? So it's just building up the picture.
And a couple of points on drying. If you were interested particularly in the bark, at Shuttleworth, we were looking at more for the biofuel aspects, and we did use a maize chopper in the winter, and then just the simple fans which are used for stored grain was quite effective with woody material, which would also have the bark that you're after.
I'm not after the bark. I can tell you, I'm after the leaf. I'm not after the bark. Other people are after the bark. There's other uses of the bark. But in terms of what, yeah, my major sort of use as a cobalt biosupplement, I want the leaf. And general as a nutritional feed, your leaf is going to be easier to digest. We have the energy and the protein compared to the bark. So, to me, the bark is a you know, it's something. Sometimes I think some of the chat with the bark is we want to leave it on the trees and not have them grazing it off. So it's an interesting conversation around the bark. Just picking up a bit of chat in Jane in chat. How are we going to measure impact of feeding willow on our lambs? Basic non-recording weight gains, time to finish. But in order to record the impact of feeding willow, you're going to have to not feed willow. And that's the sort of basis of where we were trying to look with some of the trial work, was to get that level of impact. Yeah, we've done the level of impact on, we can feed willow and we get high B12s in lambs, which should then you know, should be at levels to support production, but then you need your bigger lamb groups to get production. So, you know, if you're on one farm, one group, we're needing 100 lambs on willow, 100 lambs not on willow. But if we get a body of evidence from people with less lambs, you know, I found it all add together, and the numbers will get, you know, adding up if you're doing similar things. So that, just to come on to that question I quickly saw in chat. I've been looking at faces rather than chat, I must admit. I think we're about 5 to 2 now, so we probably need to think about wrapping up for today to keep this within that nice sort of lunchtime slot, because I'm sure we've all got things we're supposed to go off and do this afternoon. I'm supposed to go into a staff meeting at 2, I think. So there'll be things there. So if I pass it back to you, John.
Great. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I think we covered a lot. Clearly lots of interest, and I've been taking a few notes and things like that. So I think the best idea is we'll put together a very short questionnaire, perhaps circulate it to everyone that was involved. And if you can give us some feedback on more the nuts and bolts on how the network can best support you, and how we can, you know, best operate it, that would be really good. Sort of expect that maybe early next week or something like that, if that's okay. It was nice to meet everyone. We'll put together, we'll send out an email when we know dates, maybe specifically for that sort of first winter, sometime around December, probably early December. I know that's not a very good, it's quite a busy time for everyone, so we'll consider that. But yeah, thanks for participating, and thanks for the discussion and all the great ideas. I think that's it, unless Laura's got anything to remind me, anything I've missed. No, looking good, shake the head. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a very nice afternoon. Cheers.
And we'll see you all soon at the next one. Bye all.
Bye.
Cheers, bye.